Think about it. There's a product out there that's so powerful, it makes insane amounts of money for some people without producing anything tangible. It's such an invisible product that most folks buy it every single day without even realizing it. Yes, you guessed it right. That product is debt. Debt isn't some neutral financial tool or anything like that. On the contrary, it's been deliberately designed as the most profitable product in human history. At times, it has financed wars. At others, it has toppled empires and ultimately enslaved nations, quietly sucking the money out of ordinary people's pockets. But if you go and ask the average person on the street, where did debt come from, who designed it, and why is it everywhere in our financial system? Most people wouldn't have a single word to say. The story of debt isn't just economic history. In my opinion, it's the very story of money and power itself. In its simplest terms, debt is actually a promise. You take something today and promise to pay tomorrow. But hidden inside that promise lies a heart of financial control. Interest, yes, you guessed it again. Interest allows you to turn future time into money. For thousands of years, societies have struggled with this concept. Ancient Mesopotamians used to record debts on clay tablets, but from time to time they would declare debt jubilees and wipe them all clean because their leaders knew one thing very well. If most citizens fell into a debt trap, the system would collapse. In the Torah, debt forgiveness is commanded every 50 years. The logic is simple. Debt is a dangerous thing. If left unchecked, it can enslave entire societies. But as history progressed, elites learned not to erase debt, but to turn it into a weapon instead. In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church officially banned usury, that is, charging exorbitant interest, but merchants and bankers quickly found ways around it. They would disguise loans as trade contracts or invent complex financial instruments and say, this isn't a loan at all. During the Renaissance, powerful banking families like the Medici in Florence built empires not through land or armies, but through lending. They lent to kings, popes, and merchants, and in return, they received not just money but political power as well. Debt had stopped being merely financial. It had become the engine of power. The real major transformation came in the 17th century with state debt. When the Netherlands was fighting for independence from Spain, it started selling bonds to its own citizens. People would buy government debt, earn interest, and sell the bond to someone else. Wars were no longer limited by the gold in the king's treasury. They could now be financed indefinitely by selling the future. The Dutch perfected this model, and soon England copied it. When the Bank of England was established in 1694, national debt became a permanent institution. The state no longer borrowed from individual lenders. Instead, it borrowed from a central bank that issued banknotes in exchange for those loans. For the first time, a government wasn't just using debt in emergencies. It was living on debt continuously, rolling it over endlessly. The bankers who managed this debt became indispensable to the throne. Debt had moved beyond private contracts and become a foundational pillar of the state. The profits? Absolutely mind-blowing. Lending to governments was the safest bet in the financial world because the state could raise taxes to pay its creditors. Wars that would once have bankrupted kings could now be financed forever. Those wars, in turn, expanded empires, opened new markets, and created even more opportunities for debt. It was a perfect cycle. The more wars, the more debt. The more debt, the richer the creditors. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the bond markets in London, Paris, and Amsterdam became the beating heart of global finance. Armies marched, ships sailed, colonies were conquered, all with borrowed money. But it didn't stop with states. As industrial capitalism spread, ordinary people were drawn into this cycle too. Railroads, factories, and infrastructure projects were all built with credit, bonds, and bank loans. Workers earned wages from companies financed by debt, then borrowed themselves to buy homes and consumer goods. Debt seeped into every layer of the economy. By the 20th century, debt was no longer just a tool for governments or the wealthy. It had become an everyday product sold to the masses. Mortgages, car loans, credit cards, student debt. The entire structure of modern life was built around normalizing borrowing. The brilliant or cruel part is this: debt doesn't profit just once. Every interest payment is a constant transfer of wealth from the debtor to the creditor, from the many to the few. With a normal product, you pay once, use it, and it's done. But debt is different. It's designed to be permanent. It locks you into an endless cycle of payments. A house bought with a 30-year mortgage ends up costing 2 to 3 times its listed price. Credit card debt that gets rolled over grows faster than the principal. What starts as a promise turns into a trap later on. So, debt isn't just a financial arrangement. It's history's most successful business model. It needs no factory, no inventory, no raw materials. It generates wealth from time itself. Those who understood this first, the merchants of Amsterdam, the bankers of London, the financiers of Wall Street, became the architects of the modern financial system. This system doesn't just manage debt. It produces it, expands it, and depends on it to survive. Actually, you can find many videos on this very topic on my channel. Please visit my channel at the end of the video. Anyway, back to our topic. By the mid-20th century, debt had ceased to be merely an emergency tool and had become the lifeblood of the global financial system. The 1944 Bretton Woods agreements were celebrated as international cooperation, but in reality, they institutionalized debt. The IMF and World Bank were established to lend to countries in crisis or development, but the essence was this: debt became a tool of discipline. Countries could borrow, but only on terms set by creditors. The IMF, dominated by the US and Europe, attached structural adjustment conditions to loans. What will you cut? What will you privatize? How will you reorganize your budget? Debt wasn't just profitable. It had become a means of political control. Heavily indebted countries lost their sovereignty. Their policies were written not in their own capitals, but in Washington or Basel. It was supposedly for stability and growth, but in reality, it created dependency. At the same time, a quiet revolution was happening in the daily lives of ordinary citizens. After World War II, banks found a way to sell debt, not just to states and companies, but directly to households. The mortgage became the middle class's biggest dream. Home ownership, once reserved for elites, became available to millions, but in exchange for 30 years of payment servitude. Car loans, installment plans for furniture, and then credit cards, debt was marketed like any consumer product. The psychological shift was enormous. Borrowing was no longer shameful or exceptional. It became the normal way to participate in prosperity. Buy now, pay later. Enjoy today, let tomorrow worry about itself. For banks, it was like a gold mine. Interest from millions of households meant steady, compounding profits. For governments, it created the illusion of endless growth, since consumption could be pumped up with credit even if wages stagnated. For companies, it guaranteed customers who could always spend money they didn't yet have. Debt became the invisible engine of modern capitalism. Unlike selling physical goods, selling credit is infinitely scalable. No need to mine or build factories, just signatures, contracts, and the authority to create money from promises. Of course, the danger is this: the system became addicted to growth. Banks don't want it paid off quickly. They want them rolled over, refinanced, extended. The longer you stay in debt, the more profitable you are for them. Governments learn that borrowing is easier than raising taxes. Politicians can make promises today and pass the bill to future generations. Central banks, with their money printing power, always ensure enough liquidity to keep the wheels turning. Debt is no longer a temporary bridge. It's the permanent architecture of the financial system. In the 1970s and 1980s, the consequences of this addiction became impossible to ignore. Developing countries in Latin America, Africa, and Asia had borrowed wildly after the oil shocks, encouraged by Western banks. When interest rates skyrocketed under Paul Volcker, they couldn't service their debts. In 1982, when Mexico announced it couldn't pay, the debt crisis exploded. The solution? More loans with harsher terms. The IMF and World Bank stepped in and deepened the debt trap. Borrow to survive, then borrow again to repay. With each cycle, you lose more control over your economy. The people face austerity, inflation, unemployment. Elites and creditors collect interest. Meanwhile, in the developed world, the financial sector found new ways to package and sell debt itself. Mortgages, car loans, corporate bonds were bundled into securities and sold on global markets. Debt was no longer just a debtor-creditor relationship. It became a commodity in its own right. Wall Street shifted from producing goods to designing debt instruments. They called this financialization. Credit became the most important raw material of the modern age. The profits were staggering. A bank creates a loan, sells it to investors, pockets the fees, and moves on to the next one. Risk appeared to be spread, but was actually just hidden, waiting for the next crisis. The 2008 collapse was a logical outcome. Trillions in securities built on the assumption that American homeowners wouldn't default en masse imploded. Debt had detached from reality. When it snapped, the entire global financial system shook. Government stepped in not to punish the sellers of bad debt, but to rescue them, proving once again who the system really serves. Ordinary families lost homes, jobs, savings. Banks were bailed out. Once the dust settled, debt usage didn't decrease, it increased. The crisis caused by debt became the excuse to create even more of it. Central bank interventions, ultra-low interest rates. Now, debt isn't just profitable, it's indispensable. Every part of the global economy depends on it. Governments fund deficits. Companies buy back shares. Households maintain living standards. Without constant borrowing, the system would collapse. Debt has become the product that holds everything up, an endlessly sellable, rollable, inflatable product. It's the perfect business because it requires no innovation or physical inputs, just the confidence of borrowers and protection of governments. After 2008, central banks slashed rates to zero and flooded the system with liquidity, saying we'll restore stability. But in reality, they supercharged the addiction. Cheap credit encouraged governments, companies, and households to borrow even more. The numbers are mind-boggling. Today, global debt has exceeded $300 trillion, more than 3 times the world's annual output. Humanity has never been this indebted. And the irony? This mountain of debt is celebrated as growth. Politicians boast about rising GDP, but they know much of it is money borrowed from the future. Debt has become so normalized that we don't even question it anymore. A 20-year-old takes on tens of thousands in student loans, sold as an investment in their future. A couple signs a 30-year mortgage, marketed as your dream come true. Governments run deficits every year, and voters barely notice because the consequences are invisible in the short term. Inflation acts like a hidden tax, quietly eroding the value of money in your pocket while preserving the nominal power of the debt system. What looks like prosperity is often just leverage piled on leverage. Yet, debt's profitability has never been higher. Banks earn interest on every loan, but they've also built massive industries around debt servicing. Refinancing, collections, restructuring. Investors make fortunes with sovereign bonds, betting on entire countries' credit ratings. Hedge funds profit from distressed debt, feeding off the misery of bankrupt nations or companies. Credit rating agencies, supposedly neutral referees, are actually gatekeepers. They decide who borrows cheaply and who pays exorbitantly. Debt isn't just a financial product. It's a marketplace in itself where promises are priced, traded, and exploited. The most striking feature of this system is how it pumps wealth upward. Every interest payment is a transfer from debtor to creditor. Over time, money flows from millions of households, paying credit cards and mortgages, to the balance sheets of the biggest banks and investment funds. Debt doesn't just generate profit, it reshapes society, locking in inequality. Those with assets borrow cheaply to acquire more, turning wealth into more wealth. Those without borrow expensively and get trapped in payment cycles. Debt has become a polished, legitimized mirror class division. Now, as central banks work on central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, the next evolution of debt is on the horizon. Imagine programmable, traceable money controllable at the code level, loans automatically approved or denied by algorithms, interest rates changing in real time, penalties enforced instantly. To many, it sounds like efficiency. But if debt history teaches anything, it's this. Efficiency for the creditor means less freedom for the debtor. History's most profitable product is being upgraded for the digital age, and once again, it will be designed in committees and conferences far from the public eye. So what's the lesson here? Debt is not neutral. It's not a simple tool for progress or a natural part of modern life. Debt has been deliberately cultivated as history's most profitable product, a product that produces money from time itself, turning individuals' hopes and nations' struggles into streams of interest flowing upward. Understanding debt means realizing this. Financial freedom cannot be given to you by the system, because the system is built on keeping you indebted. True wealth comes from minimizing your dependence on borrowing as much as possible, questioning promises of easy credit, and recognizing that behind every loan offer is a machine designed to profit from your future. History is full of repetitions. From the clay tablets of Mesopotamia to suburban mortgages, from Dutch bond markets to Wall Street derivatives, the story never changes. Debt enriches a creditor, burdens a debtor, and reshapes the world in favor of those who control the flow of money. The cruelest trick of all is that we're taught to celebrate it, to swallow as progress, to mistake borrowing for prosperity. If what I've told you has given you a new perspective, don't forget to follow and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next story. Take care and goodbye.